The E-9 Cascavel is a six-wheeled Brazilian armored car developed primarily for reconnaissance. It was engineered by Ingesa in 1970 as a replacement for the Brazil's aging fleet of M8 Greyhounds. The vehicle was first fitted with the Greyhound's 37mm main gun and subsequently, a French turret adopted from the Panhard AML-90. Later models carry unique Ingesa turrets with a Belgian 90mm Cascavel Mk3 cannon produced under license as the EC-90. The Cascavel shares many components with the EE-11 Urutu, its armored personnel carrier counterpart. Both entered production in 1974 and are now operated by over 20 nations in South America, Africa, and the Middle East. Rights to the design were also sold to the United States via the FMC Corporation. About 2,767 Cascavels and Urutus were manufactured before Ingesa ceased operations in 1993. History. Development. Throughout the early 1960s, Brazil's bilateral defense agreements with the United States ensured easy access to a post-war surplus of American military equipment, including a number of World War II vintage M8 Greyhound armored cars. The Brazilian arms industry limited itself to restoring and maintaining this obsolete hardware until 1964, when American involvement in the Vietnam War placed restrictions on the amount of defense technology available for export. Brazil responded by creating an indigenous import substitution program in 1968 aimed at reproducing U.S. equipment already in service. By 1970, the Brazilian Army was developing an updated Greyhound known simply by its Portuguese initials, CRR. Ingesa, then an obscure civilian engineering firm, took over the project, and by November 1970 a prototype was completed. The new E-9 Cascavel entered the pre-production phase between 1972 and 1973. Assembly lines for the Cascavel and its armored personnel counterpart, the E-11 Urutu, were opened in 1974. The hulls were purchased by the Brazilian Army, but mounted the same antiquated 37mm cannon and turret recycled from its elderly Greyhounds, to compete with more formidable armament available on the international market. Ingesa also marketed a heavily modified Cascavel with an automatic transmission and the same 90mm low-pressure gun found on the Panhard AML. This model, intended for export, drew interest in the Middle East, and 20 were immediately purchased by Qatar. The Qatari Cascavel sale proved to be a major success for Ingesa and Brazil's first successful inroad into the Arabian arms trade. Abu Dhabi followed suit with an order for 200 Cascavels in 1977. Both Iraq and Libya chose the Cascavel in preference to the Panhard AML-90, or ERC-90 with the former negotiating a $400 million deal for the delivery of 200 Cascavels and 200 Urutus. Following the Libyan sale, Ingesa unveiled a new production model carrying a Belgian-design, Cascavel main gun manufactured under license as the EC-90 in Brazil. Service. The armed forces of the Libyan Arab Jamahiriya successfully deployed a number of E-9 Cascavels against Egyptian tanks, likely T-54, 55s or T-62s, during the Libyan-Egyptian War in 1977. Libyan Cascavels also saw action in Chad, where they engaged AML-90s of the French Foreign Legion and French Marines. An unknown number of these armored cars were later donated to the Polisario Front and Togo, while others remained in service as late as the 2011 Libyan civil war. Chad's transitional government of national unity received 5 E-9 Cascavels from Libya in 1986. Over the course of the Chadian-Libyan conflict, 79 ex-Libyan Cascavels were captured or recovered from the Aouza Strip by the Chadian military, which continues to hold them in storage. During the Iran-Iraq War, EE-9 Cascavels were operated by Iraqi garrisons near the Persian Gulf. The armored cars were frequently able to outmaneuver the heavier Iranian tanks and tracked combat vehicles on the relatively flat, sandy terrain near the coastal region. Coalition airstrikes later destroyed several north of Kuwait City in Operation Desert Storm. Following the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the surviving fleet was condemned for scrap. However, American technical personnel did restore 35 to working order in 2008 and present them to the new Iraqi army. Zimbabwe procured 90 EE-9 Cascavels in 1984 as a suitable replacement for the Eland Mk7. At least one Zimbabwean Cascavel squadron deployed into Mozambique during the Mozambican Civil War to protect Haraire's primary commercial links in Tete Province. The armored cars provided armed escort for local convoys and patrolled the roads to preempt attacks by South African-backed Mozambican national resistance insurgents. During Zimbabwe's intervention in the Second Congo War, Ilyushin Il-76s commandeered from a local charter firms were used to airlift 12 Cascavels to Njili Airport. Further, they subsequently engaged Rwandan troops advancing on Kinshasa. Some were abandoned by Zimbabwean troops in the Congo after being sabotaged beyond repair, while 4 others were captured by rebel factions. Few remain in present service due to lack of funds to source new parts from Brazil. The EE-9 Cascavel has found favor with many armies due to its simplified design and use of components already ubiquitous to civilian industry. Its low cost next to comparable Western armored cars makes it an attractive purchase to developing nations in particular. At the height of the Cold War, the strictly commercial nature of Njessa sales, devoid of any political supply restraints, was also perceived as an acceptable alternative to arms from NATO and the Warsaw Pact. Description: all EE-9 Cascavels have a similar layout. The driver is seated at the front of the vehicle and to the left. Turrets are typically fitted above the center, with motor and transmission situated at the rear. The Cascavel Mk2 has a manual turret, but all later variants have electrically powered traverse. Cascavel Mkiis are equipped with an Njessa EC 90mm gun-firing high-explosive anti-tank or high-explosive squash head shells in cartridge form. A coaxial 7.62mm machine gun is also mounted to the left of the main armament. The EC-90 has an elevation of +15 degrees and a depression of -8 degrees. It is not stabilized and only mounts a rudimentary optical fire control system, which has been upgraded with a laser rangefinder in Brazilian service. Late production Cascavels were fitted with run-flat tires and a unique central tire pressure regulator accessible from the driving compartment. External: a boxy, boat-shaped vehicle. The EE-9 Cascavel has a steep frontal glacis which slopes upwards and back towards the horizontal hull roof, with recesses for the headlamps and a thick glacis plate over the driver's seat. The hull sides are nearly vertical, but also sloped inwards towards the roof. There is a low, well-rounded turret on the forward section of the hull with a long, tapered gun barrel and a triple-baffle muzzle brake. Variants: Cascavel Mki, popularly nicknamed Cascavel Magro for its small turret ring. This was Angus's initial production model and only entered service with the Brazilian Army. It was equipped with a turret adopted from the M8 Greyhound and a manual transmission. Its prevailing feature were 2 sets of rear road wheels linked by an articulated, boomerang-shaped suspension which boosted rear-wheel drive, a characteristic characteristic that became nearly synonymous with the Cascavel and Urutu. Cascavel Mk2, popularly nicknamed Cascavel Gordo for its wide turret ring. This was Angus's first export model and entered service with Qatar, Bolivia, the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, and Libya. It was equipped with an H-90 turret adopted from the Panhard AML-90 and an automatic transmission. Cascavel Mk3, an improved E-9 Cascavel Mk2 refitted with a diesel engine and an injector turret carrying the new Brazilian-manufactured 90mm EC-90 main gun, an anti-aircraft prototype carrying twin 25mm autocannon was also trialed but not adopted. Most Cascavel Mks were upgraded to this standard, including automatic transmissions, for the Brazilian Army. Cascavel Mkiv, first production model to be equipped with run-flat tires and the tire pressure regulator, also carried a more integrated fire control system. Cascavel Mkv, an E-9 Cascavel Mkiv fitted with a Mercedes-Benz OM52 a diesel engine developing 190 horsepower. This was the final variant offered for sale by Engesa. Operators. Current operators: Bolivia, 24, Brazil, 409, Burkina Faso, Burma, 150, Colombia, 120, Cyprus, 126, Democratic Republic of the Congo, 19, Ecuador, 28, Gabon, 14, Ghana, Iran, 150, 35 operational, Iraq, 364, 35 operational, Libya, 570 operational, Nigeria, 75, Paraguay, 28, Qatar, 20, Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Suriname, 7, Tunisia, 24, Togo, Uruguay, 15, Zimbabwe, 90, and GT, 10 operational and 77 reserve. Former operators: Chile, 83, Chad,